The cost of speed $150 million. In today's money, that is exactly what Al Mansouri development was pouring into the heart of Dubai Marina in 2021. This wasn't just another skyscraper in a city of towers. This was the Horizon Marina Tower, the grandest, most audacious luxury residential project ever conceived in the district, 468 ultra-luxury condominiums. Sweeping views of the Arabian Gulf, private sky pools. Every single unit was sold out to international investors months before the glass facade was even completed. Wealthy buyers were already finalizing their custom floor plans, booking flights, and preparing for an August move-in date. Then, on March 2nd, the unthinkable happened. In broad daylight, the upper 12 stories of the hyper-luxury tower pancaked into the ground. It took exactly 20 seconds. By the time the massive cloud of pulverized concrete and desert dust settled over the Marina boardwalk, 14 migrant construction workers were dead, buried under tons of twisted rebar. The buyers who had poured millions into their dream sky mansions wouldn't see their keys for another 4 agonizing years. Dubai boomed to understand how a flagship luxury project in the world's most glamorous skyline could suffer a catastrophic structural failure. You have to look back at the relentless pace of the UAE construction market. By the late 2010s, Dubai was experiencing an unprecedented real estate frenzy. The site that would become the Horizon Marina complex was originally a low-lying coastal plot right off Sheikh Zayed Road. Al Mansouri Development bought the prime land and unveiled a master plan that shocked even seasoned Gulf engineers: 8 residential skyscrapers, 6 commercial towers, a massive luxury shopping mall, and a 5-star resort. The complex was engineered to house 30,000 residents at full build-out, making it one of the largest mixed-use waterfront developments on the planet. Al Mansouri was operating with the absolute supreme confidence of a mega developer that had never met a deadline it couldn't smash. The engineering timeline by early 2021, Al Mansouri's aggressive timeline seemed to be paying off. 2 of the massive residential towers were already finished and occupied by wealthy expats. A third tower, Building A4, was aggressively climbing toward its final height. Building A4 was designed as a 26-story monument of reinforced concrete, utilizing a flat-plate slab system. In this design, there are no heavy beams or supporting girders. Each floor is simply a flat slab of concrete resting directly on top of vertical columns. It is sleek, it maximizes ceiling height for luxury aesthetics, and most importantly, it is incredibly fast to build. A skilled crew can pour new floor every 3 to 4 days. For a developer racing against a strict August handover deadline, that speed was everything. But fast-paced concrete construction in the brutal heat of the Arabian Gulf has a fundamental vulnerability. Concrete does not achieve its structural design strength overnight. It requires weeks to cure and harden. In the immediate days after a pour, the material is structurally weak and highly volatile. The shoring crunch to prevent a wet, heavy slab from collapsing under its own weight, builders rely on temporary vertical supports called shoring. These posts transfer the immense weight of the fresh concrete down through the lower cured floors until the new slab can stand on its own. For the Horizon Marina project, the structural engineering firm had left explicit, legally binding instructions. 2 full stories of active shoring directly beneath any new pour, plus a 3rd story of reshoring below that. At any given moment, 3 full levels of support were required to hold the building's crown. Under international standards, these supports had to remain locked in place for a minimum of 10 days per floor. These rules were the only boundaries separating an architectural marvel from a pile of rubble. But in the winter of 2021, under immense corporate pressure to deliver the sold-out units on time, those parameters were treated as mere suggestions. On Friday, March 2nd, crews were pushing hard. By 2 p.m., the 24th floor slab was actively being poured under a baking midday sun. Simultaneously, a crew on the 22nd floor was ordered to strip out the wooden shoring posts to move them higher up. The concrete above them on the 23rd floor was only 4 days old. It had achieved less than half of its required 3,000 psi design strength. It was a structural time bomb. The parallels of collapse at exactly 2:30 p.m. The structural clock ran out. The initial failure exploded across the 23rd floor in a phenomenon known as punching shear. Because the concrete had not cured sufficiently, it lacked the strength to resist the immense downward force. The vertical columns literally punched straight upward through the floor slab. The moment the columns tore through, the massive 23rd floor slab dropped onto the level below. The 22nd floor, which had just been stripped of its temporary shoring, was completely vulnerable. It instantly buckled under the sudden impact, transferring the compounding weight to the 21st floor, then the 20th. What followed was a classic top-down progressive collapse. The building began consuming itself from the inside out. In a terrifying chain reaction, thousands of tons of concrete and steel pancaked down the structure's core all the way to the foundation. It took just 20 seconds for the top half of the tower to vanish. Forensic investigation destruction was surreal. The collapse tore a 60-foot vertical canyon completely through the center of the tower. From the Marina harbor, a building that had been a unified luxury skyscraper now looked like two jagged, separate towers with empty air between them. Construction debris, glass shards, and mangled rebar formed a smoking heap 40 feet deep at the base. The initial panic led surviving workers to believe a heavy climbing crane had toppled. But local municipal forensic teams and international engineering investigators quickly uncovered the real truth buried inside the shattered concrete fragments. Independent testing of the 23rd floor core samples revealed that no one had verified the concrete strength before removing the supports. The standard field-cured cylinder test had been completely omitted. Investigators pointed to a toxic combination of factors unique to the region's rapid expansion. The intense desert heat causes rapid moisture loss, which can compromise concrete curing if not carefully managed. Compounding this, the pressure to deliver empty units to international buyers meant safety margins were sacrificed for speed. The official tribunal report concluded that premature formwork removal was the definitive trigger, turning a prestige luxury address into a textbook case of structural failure. Lives in the rubble behind the cold mechanics of punching shear and progressive collapse lies the human toll of the Horizon Marina disaster. On that Friday afternoon, roughly 150 workers were scattered across the upper decks. Among them was Tariq Al-Hassan, a young migrant worker who had arrived in the Gulf just 3 months prior. He was stationed on the second floor, securing safety barriers near the main mechanical shafts, far below the active pour. The first sign of disaster wasn't visual. It was a sudden, violent shift in air pressure, followed by the frantic shouting of a supervisor sprinting toward the emergency exit stairs. Then came a sound that survivors later described as an artillery bombardment. Tariq and his immediate crew dropped their tools and bolted into the concrete stairwell. They made it out into the glaring desert sun, just as the center of the tower came roaring down behind them. 14 of their colleagues on the upper levels never got that chance. By nightfall, the glamour of Dubai Marina was replaced by the harsh glare of emergency floodlights. Specialized rescue squads, heavy excavation machinery, and K9 units worked continuously through the night. They navigated a treacherous, unstable labyrinth of 40-foot deep pulverized concrete and razor-sharp rebar to recover the victims. The cost of compliance, the legal and financial aftermath, exposed a stark reality regarding accountability in mega-project failures. Al Mansouri Development acted as both the primary developer and the master contractor, while the specialized concrete work had been outsourced to a major regional subcontractor. When the official municipal safety tribunals finally concluded their investigations and handed down their judgments, the financial penalties shocked industry onlookers. The total regulatory fines issued to the corporate entities amounted to just a few $1,000s. For the specific, catastrophic shoring violation that directly triggered the progressive collapse and cost 14 lives. The baseline corporate penalty was equivalent to a mere $300. Local civil courts ruled that the primary developer could not be held criminally liable for the localized field execution errors of its subcontractor. Furthermore, regional labor and insurance frameworks heavily restricted the ability of injured workers or grieving families to pursue massive punitive damages or pain and suffering lawsuits in open court. Instead, the families of the deceased and the workers left with permanent, life-altering injuries received strictly capped payouts dictated by standard actuarial compensation schedules. For the vast majority of the victims, this minimal corporate compliance was the absolute end of the road. The legacy and the risk. The Horizon Marina disaster was a brutal reminder that physics ignores market hype. After a 16-month construction freeze imposed by municipal authorities, work on the scarred tower finally resumed. Floor by floor, the center section was rebuilt under strict, independent engineering oversight. By 2025, 4 years behind schedule, the building finally welcomed its first residents. The buyers who had dreamed of their luxury sky mansions finally got their keys. Today, those identical units trade on the secondary market for hundreds of thousands of dollars each. Thousands of times, the paltry fine leveled against the companies responsible for the collapse. But the broader structural questions across the region remain. As developers push further into hypertall designs and reclaimed coastal land, the engineering margins grow razor-thin. The extreme Gulf environment presents unique threats: intense thermal expansion that stresses glass facades, saltwater intrusion that triggers hidden rebar corrosion, and the subtle, long-term sinking of artificial foundations. If you want to understand how these hidden vulnerabilities threaten the world's most glamorous skyline, hit subscribe. Misbuilt uncovers a new global mega-project failure every week. The global engineering community learned critical lessons from this failure. International building codes were updated to mandate continuous reinforcement steel through slab column joints, specifically to prevent progressive collapse. Construction stage stability is now treated as a critical design condition, not a scheduling afterthought. But the cost of that lesson was written in blood. The Horizon Marina Tower stands tall today, its sleek glass exterior completely masking the 20 seconds of terror that tore it apart, and the 14 men who paid the ultimate price for the city's relentless speed.